Hi, my name is Claire Walton, 30 years old, currently living and working in New York in the hospitality technology industry. On those early winter days, when the cold wind began to sweep through the streets, my parents called only to say one short sentence. Thanksgiving this year is only for adults. You should make other plans. They believed I wasn't grown up enough, simply because I had no husband, no children. While the whole family was happily posting glamorous photos at Aspen Peak Resort, they had no idea that I was the one behind it all, the young CEO who turned the resort into an icon. And then, while they raised their glasses with pride in the presidential suite, all I needed was one call to customer service. Move the Walton family to a standard room. The presidential suite must be reserved for real guests. Have you ever been dismissed or excluded from your family's holiday table just because you didn't fit their mold? And where are you watching this story from? Tell me in the comments so I know I'm not alone. Now let me take you back to the very beginning. In early November, when the trees along Fifth Avenue had shed the last of their golden leaves, my phone rang. The screen lit up with the familiar words. Mom calling. I picked up, and within the first seconds I recognized that particular tone, half gentle, half commanding, the voice my mother always used right before saying something that would inevitably hurt me. "Claire," she began. "This year we've decided to celebrate Thanksgiving a little differently. Just for adults, you understand." I curved my lips into a faint smile, though she couldn't see it. I was 30 years old, had lived independently in New York for nearly a decade, yet in my family's eyes I still wasn't as much of an adult as my brother Michael. Simply because I wasn't married, didn't have children, and hadn't followed the standards they valued most. I asked again, just to be sure. "What do you mean I'm not invited?" My mother let out a faint sigh, as if she wanted to soften the sting of her words. "Michael and Stephanie feel their kids are at a very special age right now, and this holiday should be about family, without any disruptions. You know what I mean." I fell silent for a few seconds, staring out the window of the high-rise office where I lived and worked, the gray sky in the distance already warning of the winter ahead. I knew exactly what that word, disruptions, meant. She meant me, the single daughter who failed to provide the polished image of a picture-perfect family, the one who always ended up fielding barbed questions at gatherings. "When will you finally settle down? Any happy news coming soon?" I tried to keep my tone even as I asked. "So, where will the family go this year?" My mother's voice instantly brightened, as if she had been waiting for the chance to boast. "Michael found a wonderful place, Aspen Peak Resort in Colorado. It's famous, 5 stars, top-notch service, breathtaking scenery. It'll be the perfect spot for a true family holiday." I drew in a long breath, feeling more amused than hurt. The very place she was so proud to mention, that luxurious resort she spoke of so glowingly, was one of my most important projects over the past few years. But, of course, in their eyes, I was still the daughter who wears jeans to events, the girl working on computers no one really understands. I replied simply, "That does sound great. I hope everyone enjoys it." On the other end, my mother seemed surprised. She must have braced herself for anger, reproach, or at the very least disappointment. Instead, I surrendered no argument, no plea. "Good. I'm glad you're mature enough to understand. Michael was worried you'd make things complicated." "Oh." I gave a faint smile, though only inside. "I won't cause any trouble, wishing everyone a wonderful holiday." After hanging up, I leaned back into the leather chair in my high-rise office. Through the massive glass window before me, I could see snow beginning to fall across the mountain slopes, blanketing them in white. Below, streams of guests bustled in and out of the grand lobby at Aspen Peak Resort, the 5-star destination in Colorado where I was not just a familiar guest, but the true owner. To employees, to partners, to the hospitality industry at large, I was known as M.H. Walton, CEO of Alpine Retreats, the company that had acquired and revitalized a string of resorts across the Rockies. But to my parents and my brother, I was still just Claire, the daughter who wasn't settled, who had no family, who wasn't mature enough to sit at the holiday table. They had no idea that the very vacation they so proudly flaunted, the holiday they thought had excluded me, rested entirely in my hands. A week after that call, as New York slipped deeper into the chill of early winter, I opened my phone and was immediately flooded with family photos plastered across social media. Michael and Stephanie were never ones to shy away from showing off, and this year they had every reason to post even more. In the first picture, the entire Walton family posed before the towering Christmas tree in the main lobby of Aspen Peak Resort. The tree sparkled with thousands of tiny lights, deep green wreaths adorned with crimson ribbons, and neatly stacked gift boxes nestled at the base. My father, Richard, wore the gray suit he reserved for important occasions, looking confident with one arm draped around my mother. My mother, Elaine, in a navy blue knit dress, wore a radiant smile as though she had just stepped out of a holiday brochure. Michael and Stephanie stood in the center, holding hands, with their two children, Emma and Lucas, perched in front of them in sweaters with playful turkey designs. Everyone was smiling, the lights glowing warmly across their faces, making the image look like a perfect postcard of a dream Thanksgiving. Beneath the photo, a caption appeared with a tone dripping in implication. Finally, a Thanksgiving that feels right. No distractions, no chaos, just family. I froze at the word distractions, my eyes fixed on the screen as if the word itself had pierced me straight through the chest. That was what they called me, not directly, but no less clear. In the picture-perfect portrait they had crafted, I had no place. I was the piece cut away, the inconvenience removed, so they could have their flawless frame without trouble. Scrolling down to the comments, I saw familiar names. Aunt Martha, Uncle Thomas, even some of the family's longtime friends. Everyone gushed. Beautiful, truly a model family. The kids are adorable. A few, more perceptive, asked the obvious. Wait, where's Claire? Why isn't she in the photo? I held my breath, waiting for the response. Then Michael chimed in right beneath. Adults only Thanksgiving this year. Some people aren't ready for this kind of tradition yet. I read those words again and again, my chest tightening with each pass. I was 30 years old, leading hundreds of employees, signing contracts worth tens of millions, running an entire chain of resorts across the Rockies. But in my brother's eyes, I still wasn't ready to sit at the table with them. The next photo appeared, the family seated inside Pinnacle, the resort's most luxurious restaurant. My father held a glass of brandy, trying to project refinement. My mother leaned towards Stephanie, her face glowing with delight, as if her daughter-in-law were the brightest jewel the family had ever possessed. In front of Michael sat a bottle of expensive red wine, one I knew the exact price of, since I was the one who had approved the contract to import it. Stephanie smiled, angling the camera just so, making sure the glass wall behind them revealed the sweeping view of snow-draped mountains. The caption read, "Pinnacle Dining, Thanksgiving the way it's meant to be celebrated." I let out a quiet laugh, tinged with bitterness. Their idea of a true Thanksgiving dinner was staged inside a space I had built, yet they had no idea. I kept scrolling. Stephanie had posted another short video. The kids skipping down a stone hallway, their laughter echoing, with a great fireplace blazing in the distance. In the clip, Michael's voice could be heard. This is the kind of Thanksgiving memories we wanted for our kids. Special, exclusive. Exclusive, special. Each word cut into me like the edge of a knife. While they basked in their so-called exclusive holiday, I sat alone in my office on the top floor of that very resort, staring out the wide glass window as heavy snow blanketed the mountains. From below, the glow of the grand lobby rose upward, casting into my eyes the golden brilliance of a celebration I had been excluded from. Outside the window, the snowfall thickened, each flake like a quiet whisper from the past. I thought of the Thanksgivings of my childhood. Michael was always chosen to carve the turkey, while I was pushed aside to clear the table. My parents would praise him as the man of the house one day, while all I got was a distracted nod as I carried out more silverware. Even then, I told myself, one day, I'll be grown enough, strong enough to claim a seat of my own. But now, Even as the owner of an entire empire, I was still cast to the margins simply because I didn't fit the traditional mold they so desperately craved. I sat quietly in my office, the glow of my phone screen still lingering in my eyes, those perfect family pictures cutting into my memory like shards of glass. For some reason, the image of Michael raising his glass of wine in that elegant restaurant pulled me back to childhood, to the days when the divide between us had first been planted. From the very beginning, Michael had always been the family's shining star. He was the child praised for learning to ride a bike first, celebrated for becoming captain of the high school basketball team, and later paraded as endless pride when he married Stephanie, the girl from a well-connected family. Every accomplishment of his was cherished, bragged about to relatives and friends alike. Meanwhile, Claire was always the different one, the child who preferred to sit alone with a book instead of playing in the yard, the girl tinkering with computers instead of watching the scoreboard. I remember one Thanksgiving dinner when I excitedly announced that I had just won first place at the state science competition. My father gave only a distracted hum before turning to shower Michael with praise for scoring the winning basket at a school game. I forced a smile, but inside, a scar was etched deep and it has never quite healed. As I grew older, the gap only widened. The family saw Michael as the image of a grown man, while I was forever labeled the child who hasn't figured it out. Even when I earned a full scholarship to college, my mother's only response was, "You're lucky." Yet when Michael graduated with an average degree and landed a mediocre office job, the whole family threw a celebration as if he had just been named CEO of a Fortune 500 company. That was when I realized that recognition from my family would never truly belong to me. Instead of endlessly trying to prove myself, I chose silence and to work hard for my own sake. At 22, while my friends were still struggling to land their first jobs, I had already founded a small startup specializing in hotel booking management software. The idea came to me during an internship at a mountain resort, where I saw firsthand how constant glitches in their reservation system left guests frustrated. I spent countless sleepless nights writing code, surviving on instant noodles, and living in a shabby rented apartment, all to chase the dream that one day hotels would run seamlessly thanks to my software. In the beginning, it was tough. I had to knock on the doors of small inns, persuading them to try my product. But little by little, I gained clients, gathered feedback, and eventually caught the attention of investors. That tiny piece of software became the foundation for a larger company, and from there, I stepped into a world my family could never have imagined. By the age of 26, I sold that first company for tens of millions of dollars, then reinvested in hospitality technology. I began buying old, failing resorts and transforming them into luxury destinations. Aspen Peak was one of them. Once a rundown property, I turned it into a symbol of elegance in the Rockies. Yet every time I came home for the holidays, when my parents introduced me to acquaintances, they would still say, "Our daughter works with computers." Something not very clear. No mention of the hundreds of employees I oversaw. No acknowledgement that I had once been featured on the cover of a business magazine's 30 Under 30 special issue. To them, I was still just their 30-year-old daughter in jeans, unmarried, without a stable life. That contrast often left me torn between laughter and tears. Sitting in my office, I looked down at the stream of guests below. They dragged suitcases happily, checked in at the front desk, posed eagerly for photos beneath the crystal chandeliers. I knew every corner of this place, every framed picture on the wall, every panel of glass in the windows. They were the result of years of my persistence, sweat, and sacrifice. And yet my family, the very people who should have been my source of support, had never once seen me as complete. All they ever saw were the shortcomings against their standards, branding me as unworthy. I closed my phone, leaving behind the glittering family photos on social media, and drew in a long breath. Outside the glass window, the snow kept falling thick and heavy, but inside me, a decision had already begun to form, clear and cold, like the mountain wind howling beyond the walls. I pressed the intercom button, my voice steady as it echoed through the system. "Hannah, come into my office for a moment." Within minutes, the door opened. Hannah, my personal assistant, a young woman meticulous in every detail, stepped in with her tablet in hand. She still carried that slight tension she always did when I called unexpectedly, though I had never once raised my voice at her. "What would you like me to prepare?" she asked softly. I gave a faint smile, tapping my fingers lightly on the walnut desk. "Open the reservation file for the Walton family. They're from New Jersey, booked for about 10 days. Hannah's fingers moved quickly across the screen. Within seconds, the file appeared. "Here it is, ma'am. Richard and Elaine Walton, along with Michael and Stephanie and 2 children. They've booked the presidential suite. Arrival on the 20th, staying until the 30th. They've already charged quite a bit: spa treatments, wine service, private ski lessons for the kids." She glanced at the screen before looking up, a hint of unease in her expression. "Altogether, it's already several $1,000s. I nodded slightly, not the least bit surprised. That was Michael, through and through. My brother had always chosen the flashiest option, always needing a facade of success to parade around. To him, staying in the presidential suite of a 5-star resort was proof of his family's status. Folding my arms, I lowered my voice, each word sharp and deliberate. "Contact guest services. Tell them the presidential suite must be cleared for real VIP guests. The Walton family will be moved to a standard Mountain View room. It's still comfortable enough, but more fitting." Hannah froze for a moment, as if her ears had deceived her. "You want to downgrade them? From the presidential suite to a standard room? That will be a huge shock." I looked straight into her eyes and replied calmly. "Even better. Let them taste what it feels like to be removed from a place they thought belonged to them." A long silence stretched between us. Then Hannah gave a faint nod, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed my instructions. I continued, "Oh, and one more thing. Cancel all their reservations at Pinnacle, the 5-star restaurant. Instead, move them to Mountain Hearth Cafe. It's family-friendly, the food is good, but of course, it's not a place for showing off." Hannah hesitated. "Do you want me to give them a specific reason for the change?" I leaned back in my chair, a thin smile curling on my lips, edged with irony. "Publicly, there only needs to be one reason. Reservation error. Say the system made a mistake and we're correcting it. Nothing more. We don't owe them any further explanation." Hannah let out a quiet sigh, but nodded, clearly accustomed to my cold, calculated decisions. She knew I never acted without purpose. When Hannah left, I turned my chair toward the wall of surveillance screens. The security cameras showed everything clearly. My father standing at the concierge desk, likely boasting to the staff that he was a presidential suite guest. My mother sat nearby, her eyes fixed on the 2 children pressing their faces against the glass to watch the snow fall. And Michael and Stephanie, as always, were busy posing in front of the fireplace, snapping selfies with proud smiles. Watching them, I felt my heart tighten, a strange mix rising within me. Bitterness, but also a surge of determination. They had once thought of me as the disruption to be removed, an unwanted shadow in the family portrait they wanted to display. So let them spend a day living in that very feeling, pushed out of the highest seat, forced down into a corner they never imagined themselves in. That contrast between what they believed they deserved and the reality of how they were treated would be the lesson I intended to deliver, without a single lecture. I pressed the button to shut off the screen, leaned back in my chair, and whispered to myself, "This Thanksgiving, the only truly grown-up person won't be at the table, she'll be sitting right here in this office." Then I allowed myself a cold smile, knowing the silent game had just begun. Less than an hour after Hannah left my office, my phone lit up again and again. First came a call from Michael. Seeing his name appear made me frown slightly. I could already picture the frantic, arrogant tone my brother was about to unleash. I picked up, keeping my own voice steady. Sure enough, Michael's voice crashed through like a storm. "Claire, do you know anyone here? You have to help me right now. The manager says there's another guest more important than us, and they're moving us out of the presidential suite. Can you believe this?" I furrowed my brow faintly, then quickly adjusted my tone, pretending as though I had just heard something shocking. "Moving rooms? That's strange. I thought this resort was famous for flawless service. Maybe it's just a small mistake. Calm down, try to enjoy the new room for now. The new room? Michael practically shouted. They moved us all the way down to a standard room. Claire, standard. Do you get it? I told everyone we'd be staying in the presidential suite, that our family was having a luxury holiday. And now what? They're treating us like ordinary guests. Stephanie's been crying, Mom's red with anger. You have to call someone, you have to step in, or this Thanksgiving is ruined. I pressed my lips together to keep from laughing, then let out a staged sigh. I don't really know anyone, Michael. I've just heard this resort is always fully booked during the holidays. If they said the presidential suite is needed for a VIP guest, I'm sure they have a valid reason. Besides, the standard room isn't bad at all. It has a balcony with a direct mountain view. I think the kids will love it. No, Claire, you don't understand. Michael's voice cracked with frustration. This is humiliating. This was supposed to be the most important Thanksgiving for our family. We've spent a fortune, and now we're being downgraded like this? It's unacceptable. I kept my tone calm, almost patient. Sometimes we can't control everything, Michael. Instead of getting angry, maybe you should try enjoying what you have. Sometimes the unexpected turns into the best memories. Michael hung up with a heavy sigh, clearly disappointed that I hadn't rushed to his rescue. But that was only the beginning. Right after the call, a flood of messages came pouring in. My mother wrote, Claire, you won't believe this. Our family has been humiliated. They moved us to a lower classroom, saying there was a more important guest. This is outrageous. Less than a minute later, my father chimed in. I'll sue. This is blatant, unprofessional conduct. A 5-star resort operating this way is unacceptable. And then came Stephanie, my sister-in-law, her words blurred with tears. Claire, I've been planning this holiday for months. Now everything is ruined. No elegant dinner, no breathtaking backdrops for photos to remember. This isn't the Thanksgiving I dreamed of. I read every word, set my phone down on the desk, and let out a quiet laugh. Every complaint, every cry of indignation, all of it sounded like a discordant symphony. They thought I would rush in to fix it, that I would scramble to make it right on their behalf. They had no idea I was the one who had set the board for this very game. Yet, as night fell and the snow thickened outside, a different wave of messages began arriving, the tone shifting noticeably. Michael wrote, We just opened the balcony door. The mountain view at night is actually stunning. Emma and Lucas shouted with excitement when they saw the town lights sparkling in the distance. My mother sent, Mountain Hearth Cafe has delicious chicken soup. It's not pinnacle, but the staff here are so friendly. They even brought extra cookies for the kids, free of charge. Honestly, I feel more relaxed. Even Stephanie, who had wept over her shattered dream of luxury, softened unexpectedly. The kids' menu at the casual cafe is really cute. Emma ordered a mini pizza, Lucas had turkey-shaped pancakes. They laughed the whole meal. Maybe it isn't as bad as I thought. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes, letting the mix of satisfaction and sorrow wash through me. Just as I had predicted, the sudden downgrade hadn't destroyed their holiday, it had forced them to experience another side of it, simpler, closer, and more genuine. What they had once called humiliation turned out to bring joy to the children and relief to my parents. That was the leverage I had wanted to create to show them that sometimes what they believe they deserve is nothing more than a facade, while true happiness lies in the simple things they've always overlooked. My phone kept buzzing with more messages. My father was still raging about contacting a lawyer. But tucked in between his rants was a short note from Michael. Claire, maybe we should try enjoying this the way you said. The kids are happy, and that's what matters. I laughed softly. For the first time in years, my brother had taken my advice even if he had no idea I was the one pulling the strings that led them here. A quiet sense of satisfaction welled up inside me, like a chess player watching her opponent retreat exactly along the path she had anticipated. That night, as snow blanketed the pathways around the resort and golden light glowed from the warm rooms, my phone rang again. The screen showed a familiar name. Mom. I paused, surprised. After the storm of angry messages that afternoon, I hadn't expected her to call me directly. I hesitated for a few seconds before answering. On the other end, my mother's voice came through tired, but carrying something softer than usual. Claire. She faltered, as if searching for the right words. We were wrong to leave you out of this holiday. The kids, they miss you so much. Emma keeps asking why Aunt Claire isn't here. Lucas even brought out the picture you gave him last year to show everyone at dinner. I feel truly awful. I stayed silent, letting her words fall, each one heavy like the snow outside. For the first time in years, my mother admitted she had been wrong. I didn't interrupt, I just listened. And perhaps it was that silence that prompted her to go on. Claire, something strange happened. When we checked in, the staff at the front desk kept asking if our family knew anyone named M.H. Walton. They looked at us strangely, as if waiting for some sort of confirmation. I don't understand. M.H. Walton. Your middle name is Harper, isn't it? Harper Walton. Her voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. It all just feels too coincidental. I bit my lip lightly to keep a sigh from escaping. So, the pieces were already beginning to fall into place in her mind. But I didn't rush to confirm or deny. Instead, I shifted the conversation deliberately. Are you enjoying the holiday, Mom? How's the new room? Comfortable enough? On the other end, I heard her exhale a long, weary breath. Honestly, at first I thought it was humiliating. But then, it wasn't as bad as I imagined. The balcony view of the mountains is breathtaking. Mountain Hearth Cafe is friendly, the food is good. Emma and Lucas laugh so much, probably because of the kids' menu. Maybe we've cared too much about appearances and forgotten what really matters. I closed my eyes and listened, and for a fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of a crack in my mother's proud facade. But then, she slipped back into her unquenchable curiosity. Claire, do you know anything about the name M.H. Walton? Why did the staff keep asking about it? And why, when they moved our room, did they say M.H. Walton personally requested that our family be made comfortable? Tell me the truth. Are you involved somehow? I smiled in the dark, a smile both bitter and cold. She was piecing things together, but she didn't yet have enough of the puzzle to see the whole picture. I let the silence stretch before answering softly. Mom, sometimes people read too much into coincidences. I think you should rest. There are plenty of activities tomorrow, aren't there? On the other end, she tried again. But, Claire. I cut her off, gently but firmly. Mom, are you enjoying the holiday? A few seconds of silence passed, then she sighed, her voice breaking. Yes, I'm enjoying it, but it can never feel complete without you. I nodded faintly, though she couldn't see me. Then keep enjoying it. Don't worry about anything else. When you truly want to know, I'll tell you. I ended the call there, not giving her the chance to press further. In the vast room, only the sound of the wind seeping through the glass and the dim glow of the falling snow remained. I set the phone down, my heart tangled. A part of me felt vindicated, because at last, my mother had admitted that without me, the family wasn't as perfect as they believed. But another part, buried deeper, ached with pain. I was not without feeling. I was still that daughter who once longed for a hug, a word of praise, a scrap of recognition. The difference was that too many years of being overlooked had taught me how to build walls. And tonight, when my mother finally began to knock on those walls, I chose not to open. Because I knew, for them to truly understand my worth, one apology would never be enough. They would need far more than that. The next morning, as the pale winter sunlight spread across the snow-covered mountains, I slipped into a deep blue ski jacket, pulled the zipper tight to my neck, and drew the hood over half my face. I caught my reflection in the mirror of the private elevator, the one reserved only for senior staff and me. My heart beat slowly but firmly, each thud echoing like the metallic hum of the elevator as it descended to the ground floor. This was Thanksgiving morning, and I had decided I would no longer remain hidden behind glass walls. Today, I would let them see me in the very space they believed they had the exclusive right to enjoy. When the elevator doors slid open, the scent of freshly brewed coffee and warm pancakes from Mountain Hearth Cafe rushed out to greet me. I stepped into the familiar scene, wooden tables glowing with warmth, checkered tablecloths, and a handwritten menu chalked onto a blackboard near the counter. This modest cafe was a place I cherished, because it carried more of a true family spirit than any five-star restaurant ever could. And there, I saw the Walton family gathered together. My father leaned back in his chair, phone still in hand, though his gaze drifted absently toward the window. My mother bent close to Stephanie, her face carrying both irritation and fatigue. Michael forced a smile as he cut pancakes for Lucas, but the tension in his eyes was unmistakable. And the children Emma and Lucas were utterly carefree, happily eating as though nothing at all had happened. The moment I stepped inside, Emma nearly leapt from her chair. "Aunt Claire," she squealed, dashing toward me like a whirlwind. Lucas wasn't far behind, abandoning his plate to chase after his sister. "You're here too? Are you coming to have breakfast with us?" Both children wrapped their arms tightly around my legs, their eyes sparkling with surprise and delight. I knelt down, pulling them into my arms, their warmth softening my heart for just a moment. "Yes, I'm here too," I smiled, brushing Emma's hair back. "Do you like it here?" "We love it. They even have turkey-shaped pancakes," Lucas exclaimed, his voice bubbling with excitement. At the table, however, my parents and Michael froze. Their faces drained of color, as if they'd just seen a ghost in broad daylight. My father slammed his phone onto the table, his eyes blazing. My mother raised a trembling hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Michael sat utterly stiff, his spoon suspended midair. I walked slowly toward them, the children still clinging to my hands. The atmosphere grew so heavy that every sound in the cafe, the clinking of glasses, the scrape of silverware, the hum of cheerful chatter, seemed to fade into silence. Finally, my mother broke it. Her voice quivered, barely above a whisper. You're the owner here, aren't you?" The question lingered in the air, sharp as a blade. I stopped, meeting her eyes directly, then gently placed a hand on Emma's shoulder and guided her back toward her chair. "You want the truth, Mom? Then I'll tell you." I sat down across from them, pulling back my hood and scarf, revealing the face they had always thought belonged to the wayward, unstable daughter. But today, I was no longer the Claire they remembered. I was Claire Walton, or rather, M.H. Walton, the one who had built this entire empire. I began slowly. I started my first job when I was 22. It was just a small piece of software to manage hotel bookings. I spent countless nights awake, working in a cramped apartment with nothing but an old laptop and a dream. After a few years, I sold that software, and with the money, I invested in hospitality technology. Step by step, I bought failing resorts and transformed them into leading destinations. Aspen Peak was one of them. And over the past 7 years, I have quietly built Alpine Retreats, a company now valued in the hundreds of millions. Oh, the warmth of the cafe seemed to shift into a heavy silence. My mother's fingers clutched the edge of the tablecloth. My father leaned back in his chair, eyes drifting far away as though trying to escape reality. Michael kept his head down, hands twisted tightly together, avoiding my gaze. I set down my coffee cup, my voice low and deliberate, each word ringing clear enough for them all to hear. I didn't keep this a secret because I was ashamed. I didn't hide it because I was afraid of you knowing. I wanted to see, do my parents love me for who I am, or only when I succeed by your standards? I needed to know, if I were just Claire, an ordinary woman with no husband, no children, no status, would I still have a place at this table? My mother blinked rapidly, her eyes glistening with tears. My father clenched his jaw, then exhaled a long, heavy breath. It was Michael who broke the silence first. His voice came out rough, stripped of the arrogance he usually carried. I always thought you weren't grown up enough to handle anything big. You were always different. I thought you'd never accomplish anything significant." He paused, biting his lip, then admitted, I was wrong. I've been wrong for a long time. I held his gaze, refusing to look away, letting old memories surge back. Do you remember when we were kids and you built that snow fort in the backyard? You told me I could only pass you snow bricks from the outside, that I was too small to build something big. I gave a faint, bitter smile, though behind it was an old wound that had never healed. You've been doing that for 20 years. Always assuming I was too small, too weak, too different to be part of the big project of the family. And this Thanksgiving, you just repeated the same thing. Michael lowered his head, unable to say another word. I saw his shoulders trembling, whether from shame or regret I couldn't tell. My mother rushed in, her voice shaking. Claire, I never meant to exclude you. It's just, I thought if we went along with Michael and Stephanie, everything would be easier. I thought you would understand. I turned to her, my tone not harsh, but resolute. Understand what, Mom? That I'm not grown up enough to be present? That family happiness can exist just fine without me? Elaine broke down, tears streaming down her face. My father watched her, then gave a small nod, the gesture of a man finally willing to bow his head. His voice was low but steady. Claire, I was wrong. I was blind enough to think success was only what Michael represented, family, children, a title that was easy to brag about. I never took the time to learn what you were actually doing. I was never proud of you, simply because you didn't fit the mold in my head, and that was my greatest mistake. I stayed silent, letting his words sink into the air. I wanted them to recognize their faults, not just to apologize to me, but for the first time to hold a mirror up to themselves. At last, I answered slowly. I never asked for pride, never needed applause. I only wanted to be seen as part of the family, nothing more. But time after time, I was pushed aside. From dinners to holidays, even in introductions, you left me as nothing but a shadow. Michael lifted his head, his eyes red. I remember all the times Mom introduced me as, "This is my son, Michael, a senior manager." And when it was your turn, she would just say, "My daughter works with computers." Not very clear what exactly. I stood there in silence, as if I agreed. I never asked more, never noticed that you were fighting your own battles. And now I feel ashamed. I looked at my brother, and for the first time, he no longer felt like the wall blocking my path, but a man crumbling under the weight of truth. I drew a deep breath, then said, Michael, I don't need you to feel ashamed. I only need you to remember I'm no longer the little girl shut out of the snow fort. I've built an entire mountain of my own. And now, if you truly want to, you can step inside. But not as the commander, only as a brother. The table sat in silence for a long while. From the window, I could hear Emma and Lucas laughing, their faces pressed against the glass as they watched the snow drift down outside, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside the adults. Looking at them, I felt a faint flicker of hope. Maybe if this generation had faltered, the next still had a chance to learn what it meant to love fairly. My mother wiped her tears and reached across the table, her hand trembling as it closed around mine. Daughter, I'm sorry. From now on, you will never be left out again. I promise. I gave a small nod, but inside I knew. Promises need time to prove themselves. I had heard too many empty promises in my life. This time, I needed to see action. Breakfast ended with more silence than conversation. But it wasn't the same silence as in years past. It wasn't the silence of dismissal. It was the silence of recognition, of hearts being forced to face the truth. And I knew, from this moment on, the Walton family would never see me the same way again. I drew a deep breath and stood up. Now that we're done eating, why don't we take a walk? There are a few places I'd like to show you. Emma squealed with delight, and Lucas nearly leapt out of his chair. My parents exchanged a quick, surprised glance, then nodded as if they too understood it was finally time to listen, rather than keep arguing. I led the family down a staff corridor, a place few outsiders were ever allowed to see. The scent of fresh bread and smoked meats filled the air the moment we pushed open the doors to the main kitchen. Chefs in crisp white coats and tall hats bustled about, preparing for the evening's grand holiday dinner. "This is the heart of the resort," I said, my voice low but proud. Emma's eyes widened. "Wow, it's just like a cooking show on television." Lucas reached out toward a massive pot, and I chuckled softly as I pulled him back. "Careful, that's very hot." My father looked around, nodding slowly. Well, I never imagined the amount of machinery and work behind the meals we eat. I smiled, because that was exactly what I wanted them to see, the real effort, not just the glamorous surface. From the kitchen, I took them out to the ski grounds. Snow blanketed everything in white, the morning sun casting a brilliant sparkle across the slopes. A group of children in the beginner's class struggled to balance on skis while an instructor patiently guided them through each step. I knelt down beside Emma and Lucas. "You can learn here too. It's completely safe." The ski patrol is always on watch. Their eyes lit up, nodding eagerly with excitement. Michael stood nearby, hesitant at first, then finally admitted, his tone quieter than usual. "I have to admit, this is more professional than I ever imagined. I can see why guests are willing to pay so much." I didn't reply, only kept leading them forward. But inside, I knew, the proud wall my brother had built around himself had just cracked a little more. The final stop on the tour was the CEO's office on the top floor. I swiped my card, and the glass doors opened to reveal a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the majestic Rockies. The whole family stood frozen. The walls were lined with maps, financial charts, tourism awards, and a large photo of me with my team at the grand opening of another resort. My mother's voice came out almost as a whisper. You really run all of this from here?" I nodded. "This is where I spent countless sleepless nights. Where I cried, worried, celebrated, and where I watched my dream take shape." Emma looked up at me, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. "Aunt Claire, are you rich?" Her innocent question left the adults at a loss for words. I knelt down to her level, smiling gently. "I'm successful, Emma. And happy, because I built something I can be proud of. Being rich is just numbers. Success is when you create something you truly believe in." Lucas whispered, "I want to grow up to be like you." I ruffled his hair. "Then remember this: never let anyone tell you you're not good enough just because you're different." By the time we returned to the lobby, the sky was shifting into late afternoon. I asked Hannah to arrange a private dining room at Pinnacle, the very five-star restaurant my family had once longed for. But this time, not for showing off. I wanted them to experience it with a new meaning. Not because they were more deserving than others, but because I was giving them the chance to recognize the value of being together. Candlelight flickered across the long table, crystal glasses caught the glow, and red wine shimmered in their stems. My family sat there, still a little awkward, but with a newfound sense of reverence. As the main course was served, my father set down his knife and fork and looked directly at me. "Claire, I owe you an apology." "Many apologies. I didn't ask, I didn't listen, I didn't see you. I was blinded by the image of Michael, chasing after what I thought success should look like, and I forgot that each child has their own path to success." His voice grew hoarse. Michael nodded firmly beside him. "I'm sorry too, little sister. I was selfish. I kept thinking I knew what it meant to be grown up, but the truth is, I was the one who hadn't grown at all." Stephanie reached for my hand, her eyes brimming. "I'm sorry as well, Claire. I contributed to the distance between us." I looked around the table, feeling the sincerity in each of their eyes. Lifting my glass of wine, I spoke slowly. "None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. But what matters is what we learn from them. So tonight, I don't want to hear more guilt. I want us to raise a glass to the lesson this Thanksgiving has given us." End. Everyone lifted their glasses, the gentle chime of crystal echoing in the quiet room, and together they said, "To Thanksgiving lessons." I took a small sip. The taste of sweet red wine tinged with a trace of bitterness on my tongue, just like the emotions within me now. Part sorrow, part sweetness, and above all, relief. I knew this moment would linger forever, a reminder that sometimes it takes a shock, an upheaval, for a family to finally see each other with new eyes. Late that night, after the noise of the dining hall had faded, I returned to my office on the top floor. The wide room glowed softly under the desk lamp, the glass walls reflecting the scene outside, snow blanketing the mountains, the night sky scattered with countless tiny stars. I sank into my familiar leather chair, feeling the weight of the day's tension finally lift, leaving behind a rare stillness. From here, I could see the road leading into the resort, where the lights of snowmobiles blinked slowly along the trail like winter fireflies. I had watched this view alone many times before, but tonight was different. Tonight, I knew my family was somewhere down there too, not in prideful arrogance, but in a new kind of humility. The phone on my desk buzzed softly. A message from my mother lit up the screen. I opened it, my eyes lingering on the short but heavy words. "Thank you for not abandoning us. You gave us a real Thanksgiving." I read it again and again, letting the layers of meaning sink in. For the first time, instead of criticism or indifference, I had received a thank you from my mother, an acknowledgement that my presence was not only important, but essential. A hot tear slipped down my cheek before I quickly brushed it away. Slowly, I typed my reply. "Thank you for giving me hope that a family can learn to change." After sending the message, I leaned back in my chair, letting my mind drift over the years gone by. I remembered old Thanksgivings, where I was the one clearing the table, bringing extra silverware, while Michael was handed the honor of carving the turkey. I remembered the countless introductions where my mother spoke of my brother with pride, then turned to me with indifference. "She just works with computers, nothing special." Those memories had once been wounds that drained me. But tonight, as snow fell outside, I saw them differently. They were the very fuel that had carried me here. Without those scars, I might never have learned to stand on my own, never built this empire, and never taught my family the lesson they so desperately needed. I knew that one dinner, one hug, one apology could never erase the years of being overlooked. But they were a beginning. My mother had cried, my father had admitted his mistakes, Michael had bowed his head, and I had chosen to forgive in my own way. Forgiveness is not forgetting, it is opening a new path to walk forward together. I don't know what the future will bring, whether they will truly change or not, but I know that at least from today, we are looking at each other with different eyes. I rose from my chair and walked to the wide glass window, pressing my hand against its icy surface. Outside, the snow kept falling, each white flake swirling in the wind like 1,000 fragments of memory drifting down, piling up, then fading away. I thought of the people who would hear this story. Perhaps they too have felt excluded from the table, compared unfairly, or dismissed as less than enough. I want them to understand this. Success takes many forms. It doesn't always look like the traditional family portrait with a spouse, children, and perfect snapshots for social media. Success can be building a career from nothing, daring to live true to yourself, or simply surviving whole through the years of being underestimated. Exclusion always leaves scars. I know that better than anyone. But sometimes, it's only when a family tastes that same feeling, being cast aside, being pushed down, being told they're not enough, that they finally understand what they've done to you. And in that moment, they begin to learn compassion, to reevaluate themselves. That's why I didn't strike back with anger, but with a lesson, silent, but profound. True, Thanksgiving doesn't live in 5-star hotels or in sparkling photos posted online. It lives in a place where no one is left behind, where every seat at the table is filled, even for those who are different. It's in the children's eyes as they bite into turkey-shaped pancakes, in my mother's smile when she finally admitted her mistakes, and in my father's promise that he would listen more. I smiled, my heart lighter. This year, I had given my family a Thanksgiving they never expected. And somehow, they had given me one I had never had before, a dinner where I was no longer a shadow, but a true part of the family. I turned back to my desk, opened my laptop, and returned to my daily work. But this time, I no longer felt alone. Because somewhere out there, in a room within this resort, my family was learning again how to be a family. And that was the greatest gift this holiday season had given me. I ended the long day with a whisper to myself, like a message to everyone listening to this story. Never let anyone define your worth. If your family doesn't make space for you, have the strength to build your own table. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person's resolve for an entire family to learn how to change.